This is the KnightShift podcast, powered by Black and Gold Banneret, your home for news and analysis from all UCF Knight sports. The KnightShift starts now.
And we welcome you to this edition of KnightShift, ladies and gentlemen. We've got all angles covered right here. I'm Eric Lopez. No Jeff Sharon this week. He's out. Probably just depressed over the magic pathetic shooting that they have over there on that roster. But that's okay. We got Don Struble here. We got Kyle Nash here. We got Bryson Turner here, folks. And we're going to be breaking down UCF men's basketball gets on the win column, how, hope, a spare. Plus, we're going to make a case for a basketball coach to keep coaching here for a while, but it may not be the one you're thinking about. We'll discuss that on the program. Plus, history over at softball, a no-hitter. We'll break that down. Baseball, is there cause for concern to lose after a loss to Bryant? And is there a team that could be a national title contender playing at UCF right now? We're going to tell you all about it coming up on this edition of KnightShift. You can check us out, blackandgoldbanneret.com, and of course check us out on all the Instagram and social media places that you like to find. And of course, all the podcast feeds for the episodes like this one. Let's begin. Men's basketball finally gets off the schneid after a long losing streak that we really don't want to talk about. Let's just focus on the positive. UCF knocked off Utah in a tight game on Sunday afternoon. Darius Johnson with a drive to put him up, turnover. They get the win. On Monday, Utah thought of that win so impressively that they decided to fire their head coach, which is fascinating in itself. Don Struble, you were there. What changed for UCF to finally get off the schneid?
Well, I'll be honest with you, Elo. It looked like it was going to be more of the same in the early going. Johnny Dawkins employed his 8th different starting lineup this season. I put Niels Machowski in one of the starting guard spots, even though he didn't play a lot. I guess something's been going on with Jordan Ivy-Curry. Jordan said after the game that he wasn't even sure he'd be able to go for this game, but ended up playing anyway. But Utah jumped out to a quick 12-2 run before Dawkins called a timeout, and it actually ended up getting to 15-4 before UCF started putting the clamps on them. They started rotating quicker, more active hands. Mustafa Cham turned into prime Dennis Rodman. He was battling down low, getting offensive rebound putbacks, and it just seemed like they had finally had enough. They had finally had enough of the position that they were in, and they wanted to make a statement, quite literally a statement win after the statement that Keyshawn Hall put out last week, defending Coach Dawkins and taking full responsibility, speaking for the team, holding everyone accountable, including himself, in terms of why the losing streak has happened. But yeah, no, it was a good reset win. It seems like there is a sense of relief within this team. Utah did shoot over 51% from the floor, but UCF forced 19 turnovers that turned into 20 points. So that was very helpful for them in that respect. It was a game of runs up until the end, and Darius Johnson, in senior form, in leadership form, was able to ice it with the reverse layup off the dribble drive. And then the 19th turnover they forced, Utah tried to get the inbounds on one last possession. Didn't work out for them. They had to put UCF at the line, and Keyshawn Hall, despite having a bad shooting night, sealed the deal from the line, going 2 for 2, 5 of 6 overall. So, yeah, it was a good win. You know, we got, I think, 4 games left, 2 of those being at home, 2 on the road. And this team is not relishing it too much. They understand they have to have a short-term memory, and it's on to the next one. So we'll see what happens.
Next one will be Wednesday night. They host Kansas State, who's been playing pretty good basketball as of late. They're actually playing on Monday against Baylor, I believe is who they're going to be playing here soon. Actually, no, that's the women's side. But listen, it's good to get the win. Defensively, Don, what did you see, if anything, different that proved to be different on Sunday defensively than what we've seen? Because what we've seen prior was not good defenses. I mean, they gave up over 100 points against Oklahoma State. Was there? You mentioned the turnovers, forcing 19 turnovers. Did you see something that might give you optimism moving forward, or you think this is an aberration?
I think it's just, Utah, I believe, owns it's either the 6th or 8th best offense in the Big 12. Don't quote me there. I'd have to go back and look at the numbers. So it's not like this is a super upper echelon team, and clearly they have been struggling given their firing of their coach after this game. But I
What did
will
you say to him? They got him fired, Don. Come on.
I didn't
What did
say
you do?
anything. In fact, he's a very charismatic guy. It seemed happy to be there despite the loss. So who knows what happened, guys? But it was a level of aggression by the Knights that I had not seen in a while. It seemed like they had finally shed their frustration and just went out there and played. And Johnny Dawkins said, he told them in the timeout, leave it all out on the floor. Don't pace yourself. Play every possession essentially to its fullest. And they did that. I have never seen Mustafa Cham be so physical with getting rebounds, especially on the offensive end. But since we're talking defense, again, just super active hands, guys rotating, closing out quicker, guards willing to box out and get rebounds and force tough contested shots for the Utes. And I just think it's, how bad do you want it? Weeks ago, Keyshawn Hall said they can't have their heart questioned. Johnny Dawkins said, I believe after Iowa State, that if you want to win anything of significance in this league, you have to get stops. And it seems like this team finally decided to start getting stops. Now, to your point, who knows? Maybe it's a one-off. But hopefully down the stretch here, if this team wants any hope of any sort of tournament bid, which I don't think it's going to happen for them. I think it's out of the cards now, but at least finishing out strong and with pride, this is what they're going to have to do.
All right, the thing I love, you're making these anecdotal points, Don, but the numbers back you significantly. By the way, 13 steals on the night. Big old fat hairy deal that proves your point about more hands getting involved, more aggressive on defense. But being aggressive, Don, hasn't always come with control with this group. Seeing only 8 turnovers in a contest is a big deal for me compared to nearly 20 for Utah. I think that's the story that screams why one coach saved his bacon and the other got it cooked.
Sure. Yeah, no, you make a great point there, Kyle. I mean, UCF took care of the ball. They utilized the shot clock more, which is something that I've noticed them struggling with all season. They almost go too up tempo, but it seemed like
they still had 10 shots in the game, 10 more shots in the game total too. That's fascinating to hear. Wow.
Yeah, no, they were getting into their actions and it looked good. Debo Coleman, I mean, he didn't shoot a high volume of shots, but he hit some big buckets, 3 of 5, 10 points. He was one of the 5 double-figure scorers that they had last night. Mustafa Cham just continues to grow and grow offensively, 8 of 10, 1 of 2 from deep. Almost had a double-double with the 9 total boards, 4 of them being offensive rebounds. So, again, it's just a matter of playing smart basketball, but mixing that with enough tenacity to get over the hump, and that's what they did.
Now, they will take on Kansas State, which is kind of cool because Kansas State's been playing better, as I mentioned recently, but they've been kind of a disappointment prior to that. One of their players, one of their bigs, is Coleman Hawkins, who made headlines. He transferred to Kansas State and is making reportedly over $2 million. $2 million.
Cue up your Dr. Evil, Pinky.
$2 million
right.
thanks to the NIL deal there with Kansas State. There's a good chance he's making more money than the UCF basketball team is, or if not, at least a starting lineup. I don't have the new numbers.
You're making more money than Lee Hunter. It's already out of control, Eric Lopez.
I don't know if he's making more than Lee Hunter, but it's close, right? But it's interesting here. This is an interesting matchup from that standpoint because you got Kansas State that has had a lot of high expectations because they spent a ton of money in the NIL, partly because they needed a big. That's why they paid that much, because they needed a big. Bigs cost money. UCF, we've heard, a little financially straight right now. Kind of interesting. These teams haven't played since literally UCF's first Big 12 game a year ago. I don't even think it's worth bringing up because these teams are completely different. Don, what strikes you about Kansas State here Wednesday night? I'm very intrigued to see now how UCF takes this win against Kansas State. Kansas State, they feel like if they could finish strong, maybe they have a shot to make the tournament. But I'm kind of interested what Jerome Tang and the Wildcats look like here coming to Orlando on Wednesday.
Yeah, so from what I understand, they're on their own short losing streak right now.
Yep.
I believe I heard one of the SIDs talk about that last night. So in saying that, they're going to be hungry to get back in the win column, especially now that we are truly down to the final stretch. And it's going to be interesting to see how Chum matches up Benny Williams, because if you're paying $2 million for a big man, he's going to have some talent. He's going to come in there swinging, especially when this team is trying to get back in the win column. And I would like to hear what Bryson has to say, actually, because he's been chomping at the bit here. He's got some info for us. So, Bryson, what do you got?
So Kansas State is coming into this one at number 81 in the RPI, though Utah came into their matchup at number 73. This is that portion of the schedule where UCF is playing some similar RPI ranked opponents as they start to close the year. So Don, to your point, this win here could be a big turning the page moment to finish the season with pride. Not only do they have David Nagesson though, but they also have Brandon Housen on their squad as well, who is in the upper echelons of the Big 12 in terms of distance shooting. He's third in the league in 3-pointers per game and total 3-point field goals made. And they also have Doug McDaniel, who is second in the league in assists per game right now and just assists period. So it seems like they have their main guys that they look to with Nagesson, McDaniel, and Housen. And so from a defensive standpoint, Dawkins really needs to try to lock down on those guys if he wants to add another win to the column there and keep this good, make sure to really turn the page.
And that's a good point. Oh, sorry.
Well, I want to interrupt here because I mentioned Coleman Hawkins. He probably will not play Wednesday because he hurt his knee in the loss to Utah last Monday. Did not play this weekend when they lost to Arizona State. Jerome Tang told the local reporters doesn't look good for him. So they may not have Coleman Hawkins, their versatile 6'10" big, with the knee injury. Probably kind of like Joel Embiid, very making a lot of money and not playing.
Yeah,
well, they still have Ugana Onyenso, who's fourth in the Big 12 in blocks, and then David Nagesson as well, who has kind of been their main guy down low. He's 13th in the league in field goals, period, and 5th in the league in rebounds. So they're not, I don't know if they're stressing for bigs, maybe the talent for sure, but they're not stressing for bigs as far as the Wildcats go.
Mustafa Chum, tonight's the night to grow up, baby.
Yeah, he's got to take advantage.
He's been forced to grow up the entire season, Kyle. I think that's old news at this point.
But this is the litmus test, man. Listen, I hear what you're saying is a season trend. We've talked about it. Great. Even Don has declared him as having ascended as no longer being wearing of the diaper at some point during the year. But as litmus test goes, my friend, this is that.
Yeah, 18-9 with 18-9 with 2 blocks the other night. But yes, to Kyle's point, because you're getting to a point where even the teams that are on the outside, especially the teams that are on the outside looking in, I mean, this is like playoff basketball at this point. Yes. We're down to the last 4 games of conference play, and so we're going to see. I mean, I want to see more physical play from Mustafa, and don't go into Wednesday night sleepwalking. And to Bryson's point about the 3-point efficiency of Kansas State, that is something that we saw this UCF team struggle with, particularly against BYU. If you're swinging around the perimeter and opposing teams are successful with their kickouts, UCF a lot of time is late on those closeouts, and guys are getting open looks and converting on them. So
the Wildcats lead the Big 12 in 3-point percentage defense and also in blocks per game. So yeah, that's something you're going to have to be wary of there.
UCF will then head out to Fort Worth. They'll take on TCU. UCF maybe played their best Big 12 game, arguably, against TCU. Don, you were there a few weeks back when they blew out TCU. Things were looking very prosperous at that point. UCF last year won at TCU. What worked for UCF the first time against TCU, and what are you expecting the second time around here in Fort Worth?
No, they just really did whatever they wanted in terms of scoring. And it's interesting because TCU is not a bad team in the Big 12. As far as I know, they have a
Oh, they
win.
played better since then. It's the funny part, yeah.
Yeah, I
Both
think
the
it
teams
was
went the
like,
complete opposite direction since, yeah.
yeah, definitely. Last I checked, I believe they were 8-7. So it's not like this is some bottom feeder team. I think that they just have to stick to whatever identity that it is that they have when they were winning games. What worked for you against Texas Tech? What worked for you against TCU? Even you can learn from the losses. What worked for you in that second matchup against Kansas where you weren't losing by 50? So stick to the identity and play efficient basketball. And if you can do those things, then you have a recipe for success. But it always starts on the defensive end. Even Darius Johnson mentioned yesterday, hey, we didn't shoot that well. That made defense all the more important. And it stays that important. It's consistent. And so that's what they're going to have to do, Elo.
Well, keep in mind, too, TCU could make a three to save their life in the first meeting. UCF shot one of their best games of the year from the three-point line. So maybe that was one of those things where UCF was at their best, TCU was at their worst. Probably we don't expect a duplicate of that this time around.
Eric, I would think TCU was kind of playing at their worst because they're fourth in the Big 12 in three-point percentage defense coming into this matchup. Other things that you want to keep an eye out with the Horned Frogs, they're second in the Big 12 and 33rd in the nation in offensive rebounds per game. So really want to watch for those second chance points opportunities with the Horned Frogs. And they also don't get to the free throw line very well. Third in the Big 12 and 37th in the nation, at least in fouls per game. And so I know this UCF team really likes getting to the free throw line. They might have a bit of a hard time of that against these Horned Frogs. So
sure, and
second chance points and free throw line.
Yeah, and I'll make that point too. UCF lost the rebounding battle yesterday by 3, including a very critical offensive rebound that got kicked back out to Utah's Gabe Madsen, and he hit a crucial 3 from the top of the key to tie the game. In the waning seconds. So it's like we've seen this against Houston. Almost saw this yesterday. It really comes down to stopping teams on the boards and really giving yourself a chance. So yeah, good points, Bryson. That's going to make it interesting in that matchup. But first up, Kansas State. We'll see what happens.
Last thing, Dom, before we let you go. What is the health of this team? Obviously, I think at this point we all know Sellers is pretty much out for the year. Nobody even brings him up anymore. It's like whatever. Oklahoma State game, refresh my memory, guys. They were shorthanded, right? There was no Jordan Ivy Curry in that game. No Mustafa. There was no Mark Daniels. I mean, we were shorthanded.
Yeah, so in the Colorado game, if my memory serves, they were without Jordan Ivy Curry and Dior Johnson. They get those two back, but at the expense of losing Benny Williams and Mustafa Cham.
Okay, thank you
against Oklahoma State. And Mustafa traveled, Benny did not. And now I think Jordan, whatever he was dealing with that kept him out against Colorado, it could be lingering. Obviously, Coach Dawkins doesn't let on very much in terms of the specifics of injuries or the health of the players, but he did play yesterday. And I think that these guys are just at a point where you got to tough it out, especially for a 5th-year guy like Jordan Ivy Curry. This is it. His collegiate career is done after this. And so you got to make the most of it, and you got to go out there and try and help your team. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully it's all hands on deck. I will say Tyler Hendricks, for someone who has hardly played this season, the past few games, he has been giving them some really quality minutes. I mean, it might not show up on the stat sheet necessarily, even though yesterday 2 or 3 from deep, but the intangibles, guys. I mean, he's playing aggressive ball, and he's ignited a spark into that second unit.
I'll say this. When we have more time, especially at the end of the season, all of us will have to evaluate this team in this season on this roster, how it was used and things like that. It's been an interesting year because you make a good point. Like Hendricks gave him a spark there, but he hasn't been really a factor. It's been very bizarre with some of the guys that have played, some have not, injuries. I mean, Niels Mahovsky started.
Yeah.
What was the reasoning? Did Johnny give a reasoning why Niels Mahovsky started on Sunday?
I think it surrounds the uncertainty for Juice I really think that with whatever was going on with Jordan Ivy Curry, not knowing if he was going to play, I really think he was like a game time decision. And so it was one of those things where, okay, you're going to play, but we're going to bring you off the bench. And really, I mean, Niels didn't get that much time. He was really just like a spot starter, 5 minutes and 47 seconds on the floor. Jordan gave him almost 30. So it was one of those things where I think that maybe defensively, and also Neal shot very well against Oklahoma State. He was 5 for 5. And so I think that maybe similar to Tyler, they thought that they would get something different. But again, guys, the beginning of that game, it looked like the kind of performance that let Colorado beat them by double digits and earn their first Big 12 victory. It was the same kind of, it looked like it was going to be the same kind of performance that let Oklahoma State score the most points the program had since 2017 over the Knights last week. So
it sounds like Jordan needs to drink his juice, is what I hear you saying.
Yeah. He had a decent day yesterday, 12 points, 5 of 10, but 0 of 5 from deep. They're going to have to be better there, especially to Bryson's point about these opponents that defend the 3-point line very well. So that's where we're at, and we'll see.
Eric, you just made me realize something earlier with what you said. Anyone else getting CJ Walker flashbacks with Jalen Sellers this season?
I think we can. Well, this is why, again, I want to wait till the end of the year. But Kyle, this ain't the first time we've talked about a UCF team dealing with injuries. It seems to become a trend.
Absolutely.
And we kind of like, that happens. Does it? Because it feels like nobody else gets these injuries.
It's been happening since I've been sitting in Don's seat covering men's basketball.
Well, like we were talking, right? Like somebody like CJ Walker is healthy. And why is he healthy all of a sudden at East Carolina, and was not healthy here? What, like, to me,
it's a good question.
There's a lot of questions.
I don't know that East Carolina is using him as much as UCF did, because he was a centerpiece.
No, you're right about that. Maybe that's a factor. Who knows? But yeah, this has been one of the I'll say it's been the strangest season in the Dawkins era. They've really been good. They've been good at times. They're really good offensively. The stats prove that. Defensively, they've not. You have the Jalen Sellers situation where he injures his back at the scrimmage, gets back, plays a handful of games, and then is shut down, and we never hear from again. We've had guys missing games, whether it's the flu or whatever, in and out. I mean, it's just –
the flu is a real thing in the building. That's affected the women's side just as much as the men.
Well, then what? What? What, we don't have doctors? What are we doing? What are we doing?
You're gonna catch it.
Drink some juice.
Yeah, drink some juice.
Get some medicine. Anyway, we got. Well, like I said, I want to get into it more later. I'm not one of these people that wants to evaluate a team till the final whistle, because I always love when people are evaluating teams like 2/3 into the season. Well, how does the last third finish?
Yeah, it's called Pro Bowl holding, right there, Lopez.
And there's a lot of frustration, and I get all that, but I just, it's been bizarre, man. I'll be honest. This has been a team that I've had a hard time trying to figure out, and I'm sure I'm not alone in that. But that's the way it goes. All right, Don, I know you got a lot of stuff to do. Plus, you're being punished, actually. Even if you weren't having a lot of stuff, you wouldn't be allowed, because I gave you one assignment this weekend. I allowed you to sit on in my booth, in my chair at softball on Saturday to cover UCF Ohio State, and you can't get me a win? What?
You had one job.
Funnily enough, Eric, Don was actually sitting in Alex Powers' chair, not yours.
I was sitting in Alex Powers' chair.
See, that's what happened. He messed up the rotation, Lopez.
So Bryson sat in your chair, actually, because they had
Why did you guys switch? It wasn't working.
When I got there, it was a little messy in that room. And they kept going in and out, because you know how they tossed the shirts? Well, they were tossing them out from the press box that night.
Oh boy.
What?
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah, they were tossing shirts from the press box.
Why? That's a first. I've never seen. They usually toss it outside.
Yeah, her name escapes me, but short blonde hair.
Chandler.
Yeah. She was throwing them out the window. And so, Elo, I mean, I'll just touch on this real quick. I felt bad for Jasenia Lopez. She looked exhausted, and they just really took advantage of her in the fourth, a three RBI double, and that was just kind of the end of the game. Madison Simon was keeping a minute, and then that was just the end of it right there. So Yeah, and it's crazy because Ohio State was late. They had to travel. They played in Madeira Beach, which is down by my parents, and then came up and just really put it on the Knights. So, but appreciate
One
it.
job.
Elo.
One
Yep.
job.
One
One
job.
night.
One night. I know. I'm sorry.
Well, you could read what Don's thoughts were on the Ohio State UCF game. That's going to be part of our softball recap on blackandgoldbanneret.com, which is going to be cool. Actually, Don, Bryson, and myself all will contribute to that softball article. In all seriousness, thank you to both of you because you both helped cover that while I was on assignment. Don obviously recaps all the basketball games as well. Check that out on blackandgoldbanneret.com and much more. So thank you for the bell. Thank you, Don. We'll catch up with you soon, and I know you'll be out there for UCF Kansas State on Wednesday.
Drink your juice.
Yeah, drink your juice.
Yeah, stay healthy. Stay healthy, I guess. Stay away. Just stay healthy.
Have a great rest of the show, guys.
All right.
Can't resist that rule of three, could you, Kyle?
Well, listen, all I'm saying is, speaking of threes, you'll see somebody who could actually hit threes heading to the Kia Center, where our own Don Struble will be covering the Magic and his Cleveland Cavaliers. So check that out, by the way.
That's a bad sign for your Magic there, folks. He's a Cavs guy. He's probably his team's going to win.
Hey, shouts to Fans First Sports Network for letting Don have that opportunity.
Don will be good. He'll do well there. All right, Kyle. You, sir, on the other hand, were at the women's basketball game on Saturday.
Yes.
As UCF knocked off Texas Tech in a nail-biter? Can I say nail-biter?
You very accurately can say nail-biter. Listen, first of all, let's be clear. Among everything else, it was nice to be in the room for in the building for a win, I should say. Between having to miss a game for my wedding anniversary and other issues, I'm glad that Coach Messer stepped up. I wore the ties she liked. Everything worked out nice. But you make the point about it. If you look in the stat sheet and the play-by-play, the final play is a three swished by Danae Fritz, 61-60, your final score. If Kiala Ngodu doesn't make one of her 2 free throws to lock this game up, we're in overtime, fans, and I'm not sure if they hold on with that particular piece. Of course, listen, a lot of what you saw is Caitlin Peterson doing Caitlin Peterson things, but I mentioned Kiala Ngodu doing her job in the post. Starting at center, did a great job. Wasn't the top rebounder. That was Ashola Kott. She was the second highest with 7, but putting in 13 points, 3 of them jump shots, 3 for 4, taking jumpers, getting them to come to her. And listen, I talked to some people afterward. I asked if battling Hannah Custers throughout the year up to that point got her ready to battle with Bulk, because she's not the biggest player out there. What I was told is battling with her current crew was plenty. We've talked about on the show how a dang ring is stronger than she looks. Ashola Kott is fast and fleet of foot, as well as somebody who's pretty strong. And at the end of the day, the fact that she had the 13 points quietly, if something went wrong, she was there to put it back. When she was handed the ball, she had the very smooth jumper. And listen, give credit at the end of the day to Utah doing what they did, but they had big shots late. You would have thought that Caitlin Peterson hit the dagger with 18 seconds left, putting the Knights up by 5. They hit a key 3, and then Nevaeh Brown misses her free throws and would have had a shot to tie it up. But unfortunately for them, they stepped out of bounds. Texas Tech, Kiala Ngodu is given the opportunity to score the free throw to put the game away, being up by 4 at the end. But if she doesn't hit it, I asked her after the game, Eric Lopez, how relieved were you that you hit that shot when you saw that last 3 drop?
Man, first game in a while that Nevaeh's kind of had a rough go at it there. She's been on fire for them over these last few games.
I'm not prepared to say she had a rough go of it per se, as just the flow of the game didn't go through her that particular night. Listen, I know that they were ready for Caitlin Peterson to attack. KP looked kind of rough, to be honest, in the first quarter, forcing a lot of shots and things that didn't really go the right way. I think it was Ashola Kott that got things going earlier. Just because you don't line up the scoreboard as the point guard doesn't mean you struggle. Also, to your point, Bryson, perhaps them paying more attention to her was what opened up Kiala to do what it was she did. And give credit to Emily Rodriguez. She had a little bit of rough time. I feel like the refs were calling traveling a little bit, I don't want to say creatively, but differently with her. I think in one case, I think they even took a basket off the board for one of her travels in that instance. But at Days Inn, still clearly healthy and back. She put up 9 points nonetheless, so it's not like she did bad by any stretch there. But yeah, still, I mean, getting some assists in there, getting a block, an impressive block, by the way, for a point guard, and a steal. It's not that Neve was non-existent. She just had a little bit different role in this game. You can't score 23 every night, Bryson.
All right,
Well,
let's get it. Let's get it. People can read the Kyle's recap of the game. I want to ask you two, though, more of a big picture situation here, because everybody was kind of piling on them when they were losing all the games, and were they going to win a game or not in the Big 12 and all that stuff. So they've now won 3 Big 12 conference games. They're actually 3-4 in their last 7.
3 straight home games, Eric Lopez.
Well, they won 3 straight home games, but I'm saying in their last 7 games, they're 3-4.
4, yeah,
Okay?
absolutely.
Got Iowa State, kind of a challenge there. It is senior night, Tuesday. Bryson, what you got? Iowa State at home and at Houston, the team you beat for your first Big 12 game. Houston currently in last place in the Big 12. What are we looking for from Iowa State? From the Cyclones in that regard? Because I want to make a couple of points here, but I don't have a feel for Iowa State as far as the chances for UCF. What are the Cyclones bringing into Orlando? Because UCF beat them last year, right? That was their best win of the year last year. Was when Iowa State was ranked. I don't think this Iowa State team is as good, or are they?
So Iowa State is coming into this one at 39 in the RPI. For comparison, UCF is 133. But that being said, the difference was very stark the time when they played in Edition Arena last year, and UCF still came up with the upset. But the biggest thing that Iowa State brings into the Edition Arena is one player, Audie Crooks. She is an absolute dynamo in the front court. She leads the nation in field goals right now at 262. She gets to the line quite a bit as well. 3rd in the Big 12 in free throw attempts. It's really her team. This team really goes through her. And initially, when Hannah Gusters was here, I thought that was Coach Messer's attempt to kind of get an Audie Crooks type in the building, someone who's able to, have that wherewithal to really go for it at the front court. That being said, though, as Kyle pointed out, Adang Rang and Kyle Nagodu have done a very good job defending people like that in the front court, and so I'll be interested to see how they stack up with her. But even if they do, I want to take you back to last year's matchup against Iowa State. I'm looking at the box score for it now. Audie Crooks went 6 of 9 from the floor, 3 of 6 from the free throw line, 11 rebounds. The biggest difference is that other players around Audie ended up having a not that great a shooting day. Hannah Bellinger had a horrible shooting night, 4 of 13. So it's not necessarily, so while Audie Crooks is very much a focal point of this team, she isn't the only thing. And I think that'll end up being a factor when Iowa State comes back. They also were very equal in the 3-point as well. So you really don't want to fall behind with the 3-point shot, which is something that UCF has been trying to contend with at this point of the year.
All right. I just looked. According to Charlie Cream, the women's basketball bracketologist on ESPN, Iowa State, as of this week, is one of the last 4 in. Actually, this was as of Friday. One of the last 4. They're in the playing game. One of 7 Big 12 teams projected to make the tournament in women's basketball. By the way, 7, by the way. That's the 3rd most by any conference behind the SEC and the ACC. All right, keep that in mind. So it's a big game for Iowa State. They cannot afford to lose this game,
right?
They have to win this game because this could knock them out of the large spot. And I'm sure they're going to be reminded about how they lost to UCF on this very court a year ago. So it could be let's just say UCF's an underdog. Let's say they lose this game. Houston's a winnable game. Houston struggled. Both of you, I think, which one of you was at the Houston game that saw that? Houston, I think, was down to 5 players in that game.
Yeah.
No, they were down to 6. They just played their starting 5 the entire time. Yeah.
So let's say UCF splits these 2. That gets them to 4 Big 12 wins. Let me ask you both this. How many wins did the UCF get in the Big 12 last year?
3, I believe.
3.
So 4 above 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bryson, you're in the Big 12 standings. Check the standings. Where are they currently in the standings? UCF in the preseason was picked 14th, I believe, in the league. I think they were only ahead of Arizona State and Houston, if I remember the preseason poll.
Both teams have beaten already, by the way.
2 teams they have beaten. Where are they currently?
They are in a three-way tie with Arizona State and Texas Tech for the second to last spot in the conference. Houston is alone in last at 1-15, but UCF is tied with Arizona State and Texas Tech at 3-13.
So
Don't they have the tiebreaker?
They're tied for 13th right now, without tiebreakers, of course, Eric.
But they have the head-to-head with Arizona State, unless they played them in Tempe. I don't remember if I don't think they did.
No, they did not. They do have the tiebreaker there, and I think and they have the tiebreaker against Texas Tech too.
So they're ahead, as of now, they're ahead of both of those teams, so they could finish as high as the 11th seed. Am I right on that mathematics?
12th or 11th, like
Yeah, let's go with that. 11, 12. We don't need to get crazy about it. So 11 or 12. Oh. What if I told you, gentlemen?
What if I told you?
13.
Well, they're tied for 13, but they could go as high as 11.
They are one game behind BYU. I'll say that.
Who they lost to by 5?
They lost to by 5, which could that, so they lose the tiebreaker there. But they could finish as high as whatever. It's somewhere in that 12-13 range. Whatever.
Higher than predicted. We'll say that.
Correct. A little slightly better. What if I told you that Cynthia Messer currently at this hour, as we record this Monday night, 9:05 p.m. Eastern, that Cynthia Messer has one more conference win than the head coach she replaced, who currently has 2 wins in her alma mater in the SEC, who, in my opinion, I think everybody would agree, is the greatest UCF women's basketball coach ever.
I don't think there's an argument. Yeah.
Love Abe. Abe has 2 wins in the SEC. I just watched them lose to the number 1 ranked Texas Longhorns 57-26 at home. By 31. 57-26. Nobody's calling for her head or any of that stuff at Georgia. They have a rebuild team. They've had some injuries, and they're very young. Sounds familiar, guys?
Little bit. By the way. Go ahead, Eric. I'm sorry.
So let me get this straight. She's got 3 wins, which matched last year. If they can win one of these next 2, I'm not going to get, you have more Big 12 wins than last year. You would finish higher in the standings than you were projected.
Right.
With a team that, let's be real, nobody expected to contend. It wasn't like, hey, this team has a chance to make the NCAA. Even both of you. I remember we did the preseason show. You said best case scenario, what, 5-6 wins was your predictions conference-wise?
I believe so. I said winning record overall.
Yeah, that's what I remember too.
Well, the winning record, that did not age
well.
It did not pan.
No. I think it was just get more wins than last year. Improvement over last year was kind of the theme.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
Where are we here? Where are we with this team? My whole point is this. I'm not sure. I know people are get all upset when they get blown out by 30-40. I hate to break it to people. 95 to 97% of women's basketball games end in blowouts. I'm sorry. Like I just told you the Texas-Georgia score. Hey, how did Dawn Staley do a week ago against Gino in her own home backyard at home? She got smoked. All right? Kyle, you witness a rarity in women's basketball, which is a game that comes down to the wire. That is rare in women's basketball. So I don't get caught up in blowouts because that's just the way the sport is for a lot of reasons. We don't need time to get into all that. My point is this. They're 3-4. And Bryson, you could correct me if I'm wrong. This stretch of 3-4, was that since the Gusters left the team, departed, which was broken by our very own Kyle Nash here on Black and Gold Banneret?
So she was gone, I believe, her for the Oklahoma State game against her former school. I believe that was her first game gone. Right. And so, yeah, if you count Oklahoma State, that's 3 straight losses. Oklahoma State, Iowa State, Baylor. They beat Houston, lose out in Utah, beat Arizona State, lose out in Kansas, and then Texas Tech. So
Emily was out with an injury, right?
Yep, Emily and Summer Yancey.
Right. So I'm not saying this team is like a world beater and everything, but I think my argument is I think Cynthia Messer does deserve another year. So I don't really agree with the conversation about she should go or any of that speculation stuff.
Well, it's the kind of stuff that comes up when you lose a large streak of games. It's not like there's another UCF coach that lost 7 straight, and that conversation came up. He said sarcastically to his 2 friends, who knows that firing Johnny is the stupidest thing you could do for this program. Great article, by the way, Eric Lopez, that I was told by a certain Dolly Drama of the Sons of UCF was one of his favorites that we've done this year. So there you go with that.
It was a couple years ago.
Yeah,
but yes. Always gets brought up, especially.
Shouts to him, of course. I do.
But here's the point, and I'll go full circle on this: is just like we've talked about with the men's program. It's not like the women's program. It has a ton of revenue and resources to play with.
Exactly.
Okay. And I'm not saying I don't know if Cynthia is the long-term answer or not. I just think she should get next year and see what happens, because you've got a young group that we'll see what happens there. I'm not saying they do need to improve more next year. I think next year is a pretty important year. It is worth mentioning she has multiple years left in her contract. In my opinion, I understand people are frustrated from that. Maybe they thought they should be better, but I don't think they're as bad. Like, they're not great. They've struggled, but I also don't think the expectations warranted, like, being this quote disappointed. Like, they're kind of what people thought they would be outside maybe of some people. That's my point.
And for all the times that stars were missing throughout the year, I think can't be stressed enough. How many games KP was missing, Hannah when she was still relevant, Hannah Gusters, that was a thing. Asholo Akkad ended up being put out on the parameter for Emily. You mentioned Emily Rodriguez's injury earlier. This was something they all dealt with, and we won't even talk about, earlier in the year, Layla Jewett, and of course, an assistant coach also leaving in Canada.
Again, I'm not saying everything's hunky-dory. I'm not suggesting that. But I'm just saying, put it in proper context. Plus, again, women's basketball, not your big revenue maker.
Yeah, you haven't said it outright. That buyout for Satia Messer isn't.
Well, there's a dollars and cents aspect of this that just, to me, you got to give her another year. Got to, in my view, my opinion. It's not like they're packing the place. And I got news for people. They've never packed the place when they won or lost at women's basketball. So it's not like some sports, like, I understand the pressure, like, to some extent. Men's basketball has brought attendance up. Other sports has got attendance. So pressure comes with that. Football, right, Kyle? Football. One of the reasons why people turned on Gus in a lot of ways was because they were, a lot of attendance, a lot of money, revenue. It makes a difference, right? I don't believe that's the case here in women's basketball. I don't believe that her getting another a year is going to harm the women's basketball program at all. I really don't. And I'm not suggesting that they would that's going to turn around next year. It may not, but I think you got to see this through for at least another year, in my opinion. But that's my thoughts.
Well, this is interesting because if there was one thing that I felt like Satia Messer has done a very good job with ever since she came here was recruit. Because you look at the people that she brought in. She found Caitlin Peterson in the transfer portal. She got Neve Brown from the transfer portal. She recruited Kyle Nagodu and Ashola Cott. She brought in Emily Rodriguez, who, by the way, was getting offers from UConn and South Carolina were on her list, and Emily came here. And then you also have Summer Yancey, Adang Ring, and Mahogany Chandler Roberts, who have been thrown into the fire and gotten Big 12 experience, a lot of it, quite early on in their careers. Also, there are no juniors on this squad. Once these seniors that are on the team leave, you could potentially have a group of players that could stick around with each other for 2 years, kind of like how we've seen with softball and men's tennis as of recent weeks. I think that this kind of core that we're seeing Satia build a core for the next couple of years, and the success of that core, I think, is going to end up determining her future here at UCF. That core end up being Ashol, Kiala, and Emily, I think.
Kyle, who is, okay, the argument to keep Dawkins, one of it is you want to keep Mustafa, right? He brought Mustafa. That's the highest touted recruit. I think you build around him. He probably, hopefully, stays. Johnny's back next year. He's back next year. Maybe Keyshawn Hall comes back for a senior year. Maybe Jalen Sellers gets healthy, gets a medical. Now you got a kind of a core to build on. That's the case to keep it. And I think from a men's basketball standpoint, is the thing they got to evaluate. And I think both the programs are similar to this.
Yep. They
got to identify what their identity is. Are they an offensive team? Are they a defensive team? Because I think with men's basketball, part of the issue this year was they thought that, hey, if we can concede we can push the pace a little bit more, shoot more threes, we could be more offensive and maybe give up a little defense, but we can make it up on the offensive end. It turns out they gave up more than they anticipated defensively. I think there's some roster deficiencies that we have been talking about for months on the men's side defensively, lack of size, depth, and things like that I think has hurt this team, injuries, etc. They have to evaluate all of that at the end of the season of what is the best identity moving forward for the basketball program. I think all of that applies to the women's side, does it not?
The only way I would alter that is I don't feel like there's been a lot of games where UCF has been physically beat up. Not to say it hasn't happened at all, but more often than not, they're in there toe-to-toe fighting even after Hannah's gone. What they didn't expect, Eric, was to be this porous on the perimeter. The way that teams have shot from three against UCF on the women's side is absolutely nuts. Gentlemen, just this past weekend as a case study, the third quarter, UCF's leading at the half by 1. The third quarter, they come out to a 9-point run, which is immediately shut down by 3 of 5 from 3 by Texas Tech. By the way, nearly won the game themselves by getting key threes late. So that perimeter defense, I can absolutely tell you, is what the TMSers are going to look to shore up from a defensive perspective.
That has been a theme the entire season, Kyle. I remember talking to Coach Messer, and I believe it was the Houston went around that I remember that she addressed threes with the team specifically in practice. And I saw a bit of an improvement from there. Now, are they perfect? Of course, no. I mean, in the end, a lot of those threes come from Caitlin Peterson, but I think what
shooting the threes,
shooting the threes, yes. But I mean, in a way, a great defense from your opponent shooting threes is you shooting threes to match them. So you have I think Coach Messer knows this, and so from a long-term recruiting standpoint, I think that kind of helps in what she's looking for. I almost think from a coaching standpoint, because remember, think about on the Dawkins end, think about the players that Coach Dawkins has brought in. You have the true freshman Mustafa Tiam, redshirt freshman Mikey Williams, sophomore Niels Mahosky, who Don was talking about was having some pretty good games against some Big 12 opponents. JJ Taylor, Keyshawn Hall is another year. That sounds like a pretty good core to work off of. And so you're thinking about I know this is, by the way, a foreign thought for some college sports fans, but long term is very important to think about. And so I almost feel like that thinking, and I know it's hard to think about long term because the transfer portal exists, but that's a way to think differently from everyone else, because if everyone else is thinking much more short term because of the transfer portal existing, if you try to think long term.
Well, and some of this is beyond your control. We don't know what we'll see what the roster looks like. That's part of it. That's all I'm saying. Like, at the end of the year for both programs, what is your identity? Who's back, core around, and how do you improve on that? Like, I think that's, to me, I think both in a similar boat in that regard. But I'm just, like, I'm not surprised that the women's team is where they're at. I don't know where this team could be, like, middle of the pack or whatever in the big. I never thought that. I understand the men's side being a little more disappointing just because they were really playing well, beating A&M, Texas. And we haven't seen that from the women's side. So again, I'm not saying that it's going to be fixed in a year, but I do think, they have played better recently.
Yeah.
3 and 4.
Schedule was a little easier too to match it. They won some games they should have.
The schedule was soft in the second half. Help me out here, Bryson. The Big 12 tournament format as of now, let's say UCF's a 12, or who would they play in the opening round? 11, 12, or is it how does the format work in the Big 12 women's tournament? I believe they would get a playing game, wouldn't they?
So the 12 seed plays the 13 seed, 11 seed plays 14 seed. That's around.
So today they're playing 12.
Let me throw this out here. Let's say they split the next 2 games. You win at Houston. They end up, 12 seed, whatever. You play Arizona State or Houston again or whoever. You win that game in the Big 12 tournament, bow out after that. That's better than last year, no?
It absolutely is.
No, it absolutely is. I mean, think about the crap that this team has gone through, the injuries, the porous 3-point stuff. If this is what this team can do when they have been hobbled and just decimated by injury. What can you do when this team is at full capacity? With
You're asking the wrong
more,
question, Bryson. No, what the question is, what we're actually seeing right now is this core now that they're having next year. This is the point that we need to make. They're on display. What you're seeing next year now, next year's product is doing more than what was built for this year earlier in the year against non-conference opponents. That's the takeaway.
And the key is too, now you have to address the flaws, like you guys brought up the perimeter issues of the backcourt and stuff like that. You got to build on that. Look, I think both Johnny and Cynthia have to. There's a roster piece that they have to evaluate. That, okay, where did we go wrong on the roster? Like in men's basketball, was the size. They didn't get enough size, in my opinion. Why? Who knows? We don't know the answer to that.
That's kind of been a traditional Johnny thing. We've talked about that on this show, right?
Women's, they got to address all that. There were some roster misses. Why, the Gusters thing didn't work out. That's the risk when you go into portal. They don't always succeed. They don't always work out, and that's not her fault. I'm not blaming anybody. Things just don't work out for a reason. So I think all those things have to be evaluated after the season by all parties. That's all I'm saying.
And I will add this, and it's going to be the controversial take. I don't care if she's a leading scorer or not, but going into the season, taking weight off of Caitlin Peterson was supposed to be something that happened. It didn't. Apparently, they even stepped back taking the three because they lost Rachel Ranke and Maya Burns down the stretch in Sutia Messer's career here. I think Caitlin Peterson being off the roster and forcing them to play more team-style ball is going to make this team either make or break to become better, and there's a good chance there's addition by subtraction there.
Maybe. We'll see. It has to be. Otherwise, I don't think at that point, if it doesn't, then there could be.
I guess it's less of who's the next queen and is it a Hydra situation where if you pop off one head, 2 more or 3 more take its place.
That's what
I don't know. But we'll continue this. We'll continue this conversation a few weeks after the season. We'll see what happens here. They got Iowa State and then Houston in the Big 12 championships there for both. The men are against Kansas State, and then at TCU they got a couple more extra games after that. They host Oklahoma State, and then they finish up at West Virginia before the Big 12 championships. Kyle, before we let you go, this is an important week for UCF football players that are trying to make it in the NFL in the combine. I know you're working on some pieces on that on the banneret, but give us an idea of what's at stake this week for some UCF guys, in particular, RJ Harvey.
Listen, all of them are at a severe disadvantage because what did they have this year that they usually get? An extra game on national television to showcase their stuff in a bowl game. UCF didn't have that this year. Now, what RJ Harvey and company may have that others don't is an interesting conversation. I bring that up in the article, in particular to RJ Harvey, and where I think it is that they might actually make sense and fit in some of their cases. Or are some of these, let's say, prospects kind of out over their skis and maybe just haven't realized it yet? Maybe there's one of these I'm thinking, hey, the UFL may not be a bad stop for you. All of that is stuff I'll go over in the Combine series myself with a little help from Jeff Sharon covering PJ Adams. So yeah, there's that upcoming here on the blackandgoldbanneret.com.
Who's got the most to gain this week? Any of the UCF guys?
I think the guy that needs to make the biggest jump is Kobe Hudson. That's because, listen, RJ Harvey's done some stuff. He's gotten some hype out of the Senior Bowl. I talk about that some in the article, but I think it's Kobe Hudson who needs to do something similar to what Jacob Harris did to get in the NFL. Now, granted, he's not taller than me, so that's not something he can take advantage of like Jacob Harris did, but we need to see something from him similar to that, to where this past season, stat weight wise, may not have been super great, but he had certain clutch moments, could catch the ball at key points, and he needs to come out in pro days and in the combine to say, hey, I'm that athlete. I can catch the important ball. So if you have a big star out and you need a play at the end, I can make it.
Should be interesting. I'm just glad somebody's doing something at the combine. I feel like every time I'm checking the TV, the reports are, well, this guy's not going to do this. This guy's not going to do that.
Oh, you don't have to worry about with the UCF guys, man, because they have to prove themselves extra. A, UCF is still considered a villain out there in the zeitgeist. Yeah, I said it. And B, these guys, like I said, did not get the normal extra looks that they would get in postseason play.
All right, we'll break that down. I'm looking forward to that. And again, check out blackandgoldbanneret.com. Kyle's going to break it down for you. The guys will get you ready for those combines. And then before you know it, I believe Pro Day, right? They're going to do a Pro Day. Do we know?
Yeah, for the conference. Yeah.
For the conference as well. And by the way,
Yeah,
folks,
they don't do local pro days anymore, Eric Lopez. You have to fly to Las Vegas or something. I don't know. I think it's in Jerry World this year. I could have that wrong. I'd have to double check. But
did I ever tell you about? I was at Blake Bortles' Pro Day.
That must have been interesting.
It was cool, man.
I was at Team Griffin's Pro Day.
The funny part about that, Todd McShay was there and everybody was there. And
yeah,
I remember Blake did his drill, and the guy that went over after he was done to embrace him was Gus Bradley. And everybody was trying to downplay, oh, that's not that big of a deal. And then where did Blake Bortles end up?
Well, hey, there is whispers and noise that soon enough, RJ Harvey will be the latest to say Duval.
Whoa!
Or on
Hello.
What a tease, Kyle. What a way to go. Wow.
Honor, joy, and privilege until next time, everyone. Class dismissed.
That's an all-timer there from Kyle Nash. Just leaving that on the bone. A little RJ Harvey, Jacksonville speculation. Thank you, Kyle.
For all the latest news and analysis from every UCF sport, visit blackandgoldbanneret.com, your home for the UCF Knights on SB Nation. We bring you all the latest news and in-depth analysis from across Knight Nation, from football and hoops to golf and tennis. If you want to stay on top of all things UCF, visit blackandgoldbanneret.com, powered by SB Nation.
All right. We got about 20 minutes or so here with Bryson, so we're going to be efficient. Baseball. Let's start with baseball. You were at baseball. Kind of a weird week. The Missouri midweek turned into a Thursday game because of weather. UCF dominated Missouri. Took 2 out of 3 from Bryant. It was a pretty good series. They dropped the Sunday game. Your takeaways from the week that was for baseball as they get set to host FAU on a midweek and then go to Tampa to take on South Florida for a 3-game series.
So I think this pitching staff was looking really promising. They weren't perfect for sure, but they were never to the point where they made it a too insurmountable of a deficit. In fact, they only allowed one multi-run frame the entire weekend, and it was the second inning of game number 1. So Bryant kind of, when they won on Sunday, it was kind of more of a death of 1,000 cuts type of thing. In fact, 4 of their 5 runs scored on outs. It was RBI outs 4 or 5 times for Bryant. So in the end, what ended up happening, Bryant actually got up ahead of UCF. They struck first all 3 times. So it was down to UCF's bats to essentially make up the difference. And I think that the Bryant series is a good little microcosm of kind of what baseball can be sometimes, where especially where a good team like UCF is able to come back a majority of the time, but they're not perfect. And Sunday proved that. And after all, I mean, they've just finished, playing 4 games in 4 days. So fatigue could easily be a factor in there. But the bats just weren't able to close the gap on Sunday as they were able to the past ones. But I mean, look, it was quite a games to watch at Johnny Leone Park. Edian Espinal ended up kind of breaking out, like some of his teammates have kind of been alluding to. He got a pinch hit walk-off to win game 1. He was rewarded with a couple of starts later on in the week. So I think we could probably potentially see some more of Edian Espinal being worked into the lineup from the starting jump maybe later on.
Concern about the offense. They haven't really blown up in the Bryant series there. Some people are speculating that watch them play that they can't hit balls like breaking balls and off-speed pitches. Your response to that?
I would say I would hold off on that speculation. I mean, first of all, they dominated Missouri, so it's not like they're, and remember,
Missouri team that just lost to Alabama State is projected to finish last in the SEC, may not be very good. In fact, some people think Bryant might have been the better team.
Well, Bryant is an NCAA tournament team, though. What I'm saying is that UCF took care of the team it was supposed to take care of, which is Missouri, and now they have an NCAA tournament team in Bryant. And reminder, UCF beat Bryant 12-11 on opening night last year, and we still made the regional final. So let's not pretend that Bryant is some chump team. They're not.
No,
They're
no, I
headed
don't
up
think
by,
anybody's saying that. They're just wondering about the offense. That's all.
yeah,
They're just wondering about the offense.
I think the offense is fine. I think they just have to work on getting. Rich Wallace talked about how Bryant was able to get leadoff hitters on base more than UCF did. So I would say that is really the biggest concern. Is whenever you're leading off an inning, you really need to get on base in order to get the inning off to a really good start, and also present more opportunities later on for you to manufacture some runs, because UCF is really good at pouncing on opportunities when they're there, because they've got multi-run innings a few times over the course of the weekend. So once they get going, they can be very deadly, but they have to get going first. And I think that's kind of the biggest thing with this squad. They were able to get going on Friday and Saturday. They just weren't able to get going on Sunday. And I think 2 of 3 kind of makes sense for a situation like that. When you fall behind, I'd say 2 of 3 times coming back and getting it is a pretty good amount of times. That means it's not perfect. So you don't want to rely on it every time. To me, my big takeaway from this weekend is that this UCF team is capable of coming back when they are the ones that are down early on, which is a very good quality to have. It's just you don't want to do that every time. Every time. So just get on base to start the inning and maybe not get yourselves in that situation. I think that's a good thing to look at as they work on that moving forward, as they have a slew of Florida teams on the slate coming up.
That'll begin with FAU on a midweek Tuesday, and then, of course, go to Tampa to take on South Florida for a 3-game series. So we'll learn a lot more about baseball in that stretch. Softball with 5-1. They started out, hosted a tournament. They beat certainly Quinnipiac and Pitt on a Thursday, then beat Florida Gulf Coast on a walk-off hit by Stormy Kotzelnick. Run-ruled Columbia, lost to Ohio State in a game that got rescheduled, which from the rematch from Clearwater, and then they beat Florida Gulf Coast again on Sunday. My quick thoughts, because I do want to talk about another sport before we go. Caitlin Felton, first career no-hitter, 25th program no-hitter. Did you know, Bryson, and I give credit to UCF on this, 14 of those 25 no-hitters were 7-inning no-hitters. That's the list that Caitlin Felton joins. Would you like to know the pitchers that threw 7-inning no-hitters in UCF softball history? This is going to be, by the way, folks, in our Black and Gold Banneret recap of the softball week. This is a trivia that's in that article.
Well, I already know one of them. That's Sarah Willis. I believe
you were there
Sarah Willis
for the perfect game.
Counts.
That was the last 7-inning perfect no-hitter, which was a perfect game against Houston in 2023. That is correct. Yes.
Let's see. I want to say Audis through
Mackenzie Audis. Yep.
All right. It would be wrong to say about if Turnier did. Turnier, I'm pretty sure did one.
Did one? That's correct. Yep.
Okay.
Right. You got 3 of them. And I think you have 3 more to go. You've met one of the 3. I don't expect you to get one of them, so I'm not going to force you to get all of them, but you should get at least one more.
Allison, no, Kime wasn't a pitcher.
No, she was a pitcher. A 2-way.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Did Kime throw one then?
Yes, that's 4.
Okay.
One more. I'll give you one more. I'm not gonna, because you're not gonna get the other ones. The other one you should get because you've met.
Oh, Kime wasn't the one I met. Oh, okay.
I mean, you may have met her. I don't remember, but you've met.
I've seen her. I've seen Kime. I think is my point.
Right. You've actually met and talked to the other pitcher.
The one I can think of is Mancha. No,
wasn't her. Believe it or not, I thought the same thing, but no, she never threw a 7-inning no-hitter. She threw 3 no-hitters, but they were all like either 5, 6-inning no-hitters. Just things like that.
Okay.
We're talking 7-inning no-hitter.
Let's see. I met her. Was it on the field or off the field?
I mean, I'm now giving you too many clues. You met the person. That's all I know.
Okay, all right. You just love this, don't you, Eric?
All right, we got to get going. So I'm gonna.
All right. Kama.
Nope.
Nope.
It was Aaliyah White.
Aaliyah. Okay.
Aaliyah White.
That makes
So Aaliyah White, the all-time winningest pitcher. Sarah Willis, you mentioned perfect game. Kime, Turner, and Otis, 3 Hall of Famers. Willis and Aaliyah both have arguments to be Hall of Famers down the road in the future. And then the other one you would never have gotten, Lindsey Enders, who was the ace of the 2005 team when they made the first NCAA tournament bid. They will honor that team next month. There. That's the list, Bryson, that Caitlin Felton has joined. That's elite company.
Oh, yes, absolutely. But props to Caitlin Felton, because getting a no-hitter against any team, 7 innings at least, is a hard thing to do. So very well done. Very well done indeed.
They followed it up with the widower Pitt. Yesenia Lopez pitched very well. Don alluded to the Ohio State. She showed that was her 3rd day in a row pitching there. The Ohio State thing was weird. The Clearwater. I almost throw that out.
I think they just wanted to settle things. I think it was
just to get another game in and all that. I'm not going to read too much into it. I know some people are still concerned about the power of the offense. I found that interesting. UCF tweeted out today that they're number 1 in the Big 12 in doubles as an offense. Right? And I think that was in part in response, Bryce. Remember, because Coach Balboa was asked at some point during the presser about the lack of power, and she alluded to the fact they've hit a lot of doubles and triples so far. So we'll see. I think it's a work in progress. I still think it's a work in progress offense.
Just because they didn't hit a lot of home runs doesn't mean they don't have power. The thing is that when you get doubles or triples, you need another player to come in and score you in. And I think that is the thing that UCF needs to work on.
Hitting. Busy, very, 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 very tough week this week. They go to Boca Raton. They take on a top 25 FAU team that won the American last year. They're very good deep pitching. This will be a challenge for UCF in Boca. They'll be ready. Then they will host a 5-team tournament with Georgia Southern, North Florida, who I think both of these teams I just mentioned, Bryson, I would not be surprised if they end up in the top 25 mid-major poll that comes out Wednesdays on D1 softball. Don't be surprised if those two teams come in the poll. North Florida has maybe the best mid-major player in the country in Allison Benning, who has 10 home runs this year. She was intentionally walked 11 times this week, and she threw a perfect game. She's one of the best two-way players. So UCF's got their hands full with a very talented North Florida team that their head coach, Jeff Conrad, was a volunteer coach for UCF in 2015 when Hillary Barrow was on that staff as an assistant, who you got to meet in the Quinnipiac game. That was cool to see Hillary. That interview is on the recap for softball as well. Providence is also in this tournament, and so is George Mason. Very important tournament for UCF because after this weekend, Big 12 play starts, and UCF goes to Tucson to take on top 10 ranked Arizona, who has one of the best offenses in the country. So it's going to take a different level in a week. So this is an important week to kind of get some answers offensively and get some things settled before Big 12 starts with a brutal start going to Arizona there. So that's the story with softball. I want to wrap up the show real quick. You're going to do a nightcap. You do a lot of the sports, women's golf, men's golf, women's tennis doing very well. I want to talk just about this one sport specifically for a few minutes because I think this is a story that is developing before our very eyes, and that is the UCF men's tennis program, Bryson. Clue in some people where they're at right now from a ranking standpoint here, because this could become a big story if they keep playing the way they've been playing.
So, yes. So thanks to coming back from Texas with their win over number 4 Ohio State, UCF has been vaulted up to number 11 in the nation in the ITA ranking and in the ITA rankings, which is right up there with some of the highest they've ranked in program history. It's not the highest, I don't think, but it's quite up there. They just beat number 71 Stetson. They're coming off of a win against number 71 Stetson 6-1. Blew them out quite well, and they have they're coming now. They have a doubleheader with UNCW and Coastal Carolina before they take on another top 50 team in South Florida. And oh, by the way, they welcome the number 2 team in the country, TCU, to start Big 12 play on March 14th.
Woo!
This and of course they started their season off to another great season opening start to outdo what they did last year. And we were already pretty excited about last season's team, considering that it was year one of the Lloyd Bruce Burgess era. So the fact that they're already replicating this feat again and really standing up to some of the top teams is quite interesting. Coach Bruce Burgess told me he was very impressed about how improved they are at doubles play, by the way. He was telling me after Stetson that they had like 10 doubles points total last year. They're already at 10 now with doubles points. So they're improved in doubles play. The biggest thing I think they said they need to work on is their consistency when it comes to playing top teams. He acknowledges the fact that they might not be up in terms of the top 10 like Ohio State and San Diego are, because after they beat Ohio State, they got swept by Stanford, number 11, and they got swept by number 9, San Diego. So I think it's going to be about consistency with some of these top teams in the country to see if they can stand up to that. And hey, they'll have a chance to do that with Big 12 play, because Big 12 is one of the tougher men's tennis conferences out there. And of course, they have to host 2 top 15 teams in TCU and Arizona to start that out. So you said it, Eric. This is a story developing right before our very eyes where UCF could be making some noise nationally in men's tennis.
You were out there at the USTA Center this weekend. That interviews are on the YouTube channel. You're going to write about it on Nightcap. What does the UCF men's schedule look like between now and that TCU match that you highlighted?
They only have three matches left and 2 match days. So first off, they have a doubleheader on Friday where they face UNCW at 10 a.m. and then Coastal Carolina for Nona Night's happy hour at 6 p.m. So doubleheader day right there to get some more people, in on the action. Then they host number 48 South Florida on Sunday, March 9th at 3 p.m. Those are the last matches before they face number 2 TCU. And I addressed this, by the way, with Lloyd Bruce Burgess. I addressed what he wants to see from this team before TCU in that interview. So you can go and watch that to hear what he had to say there.
I bring that up because USF's a tricky match. They had a long rivalry in tennis there in the recent years in the American there towards the end. But if UCF can win out those 3 matches, which I think you would agree they would be favored. Right?
Certainly against the Carolina teams, I would say.
Yeah. So let's just say they go 3. If they can go 3-0, they're probably going to hang around that top 10 ranking, right? Would you say that's fair?
Just outside, I would say just outside it, but
close to it, right? Let's say top 15, right? Top 15.
I'll say top 15.
TCU, if they do their part, top 5 at worst, right? If they do their part.
Yep, I would say so.
You could have a top 15 tennis match at the USTA Center. What's the date again?
Friday, March 14th against number 2 TCU at 6 p.m. And then they have Arizona, who's ranked number 14, on Sunday, March 16th. Match points and mimosas at noon on Sunday. That's a weekend right there.
You can make the argument that is the biggest regular season weekend in the history of UCF men's tennis. If they were to win both of those matches or even split, then the conversation is real about them possibly being a host for the NCAA tournament like they did in 2021. Remember, top 16 teams host the first 2 rounds of the regionals. UCF did this in 2021 with both the men and the women. That is a massive, massive weekend. Maybe the most underrated sporting event in UCF calendar this entire 2024-2025 athletic year.
Let's remember last year, Eric, when UCF got to the NCAA tournament, they had to go up to Tallahassee. They managed to win in their first round game to get the farthest they've ever gone to tie the farthest they've ever gone in the NCAA tournament. And then they lose to who? The hosts, Florida State. That's how big hosting can get. And if UCF is able to hang on and potentially host a first and second round, that would be a very huge home court advantage to have to potentially try to set a new mark to get where no UCF men's tennis team has ever gone before.
Right.
And this is year 2.
Yeah,
and this is
year Coach Burgess. Hopefully we'll get him on around that week. But the women's did this. The women have been to the Sweet 16 twice, including 2021, where they were a national seed coming from the USTA Center. The men were upset in the second round. That was the John Roddick-led team with Gabriel DeCamps They were upset by Mississippi State. They got a brutal draw. They got Mississippi State in round 2. Are you kidding me?
Oh, boy.
But this, I think we both agree, much more deeper team. They don't have the superstar. They don't have a top 10 singles player like the Camps was, who should be the first men's tennis player ever to make the UCF Athletics Hall of Fame. I'm pushing that campaign. But they have a much well-rounded team. You just brought up how much improved they are on the double side. Folks, keep an eye on this team. This is a team that I think can make some noise and get to this round of 16. I've argued this with Bryson off the air. He's a little more conservative on it.
Hey, no, Eric, I will want to point this out. The only reason that I am cautious is because I believe this team can do it, and I don't want to disappoint and I don't want to get my hopes too high and disappoint myself. I care about I do think that this team can do it. It's a matter of, I don't want to be disappointed if it doesn't. That's how guarded you get when you follow this. When you follow every.
No, I get it, but they
UCF
deserve to be talked about, and I wanted to talk about them. Not that the other teams don't that you're going to talk about, but once basketball finishes in the next few weeks, we'll probably have more space room. But I do think that weekend, let's highlight that weekend. That is a massive weekend for the tennis program. I mean, regular season-wise, it's a big, big, big weekend. And we're going to have a lot of coverage of that leading up to that week in that matches. I'm a little annoyed because I believe that is the weekend softball is hosting Arizona State. So I will not be available to go if my memory is correct on that. So you will be out there representing, I would suspect. But boy, that's going to be a lot of fun. That's a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah.
Let's hope it lives up to it. Both teams got to do their business. And Arizona, too. Those three teams, UCF, TCU, and Arizona, got to take care of business between now and then. But if they do, man, woo! Hello. That could be massive deal.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I do have one last thing that I want to make sure I promote that I won't be able to bring up in Nightcap. But we have our first Big 12 championship of the spring coming up soon. The track and field team is going to be going up to Lubbock for the Big 12 Indoor Track and Field Championship on February 28th and March 1st, Friday and Saturday.
Ada Boone's old stopping ground. She was an assistant at Texas Tech.
Yes, indeed. So that's our first. So it's our first Big 12 championship of the spring. We're going to be seeing a 4x400 meter relay team that is the 8th fastest in the nation right now. So we could be seeing some entries on this squad in the NCAA Indoor Championship potentially, and they're the fastest in the Big 12, by the way. So we could maybe see another individual Big 12 champion potentially. That could be very interesting to keep an eye out for. I'll have the recap of it on not this coming Nightcap, but the next one. But I do want to promote it on here so that way people can follow along live.
Check all the coverage on blackandgoldbanneret.com and YouTube channel, as well as our social media places, Instagram, X, you name it, Facebook, all of it in there. We'll have a lot of coverage. This is a busy time in UCF Athletics. We covered just about every sport we could here. I know we left some sports out. I mean, there's stuff going on with men's soccer. We don't have time to get into that. We're not going to get it. There's just a lot of stuff, folks. We got to be efficient. But this was fun. It was fun to talk about this a lot. I want to thank Don for coming in, despite him not disappointing me by not bringing me a softball win. I'll get over it at some point, maybe in a year or so. Thanks to Kyle. Thanks to Kyle for joining us there at coverage. Thank you to Bryson. This was fun, Bryson. We'll do this again down the road, sir. Again, reminder, men's basketball, women's basketball at home during this week. Softball at home, big tournament this weekend. Encourage you to come out there, watch it on ESPN Plus as well. Baseball in Tampa against South Florida. We'll cover it all here on blackandgoldbanneret.com. For Bryson Turner and for the whole staff, I'm Eric Lopez. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of Night Shift.